Hi, hello. So I'm back to continue the story time of Rachel and Leah. Rachel, Leah, Jacob, or Jacob, Leah, and Rachel. Yeah, their story, like as I have written it in one of my um, books. So, um, in case you're wondering, like this right here is my writing. So, and I'm going to read from there. Some of the things I've written, like maybe when I can't, I just don't feel like. Sometimes I feel like writing, sometimes I feel like talking. Yeah, so this was the times when I just felt like writing. So, I stopped at where in the last video I stopped at where the children born in the household of Jacob may not have had like the kind of parenting they would have gotten, the kind of love they would have gotten if their mothers were not busy competing with one another. Well, one another was more like it, not each other, because their mates were thrown into the fray, literally, So um now I proceed. So Jacob was probably lonely too because his wives only saw him as a trophy they wanted to win and keep in their tents. He was a wanted man, so to speak. That can be, that can be flattering to a man, but only for a while. You know how some men are when, they get all, well, maybe not men alone. Like it's nice when you're admired and people are, sort of fighting to be first place in your life, but after some time it really gets tiring. Because loneliness will remind him that his love has not really been returned. That is, he's not getting love in return. Okay? All they wanted from him were sons and more sons to prove a point to each other. That is Leish and Rachel. And maybe the reason he kept giving in to their wishes, especially with the maid concubine issue, that maybe if he would give in to their wishes, one of them would look at him as a man who needs to be loved for himself rather than loved, in quotes, for what he can give them. It doesn't sound like fun to be seen as a son producing stallion. He probably felt like a workhorse. Not funny. Rachel, on the other hand, never was contented. At some point, I think Leah just let it rest. But Rachel wasn't, she didn't seem like somebody who was contented. I proceed. So Rachel, on the other hand, never was contented. She craved for what only God could give her. But she blatantly refused to serve the God her husband served. This is how I came to the conclusion that she never really, really loved Jacob. Not as much as he did, anyway. Because if you love someone, everything they do fascinates you, and you want to experience their experience with them. You want to know about the God they serve. There are some times you don't want to do something, but you learn to understand and respect the belief systems, their belief systems for the sake of who you love. That is, there are just some things that you might not normally like, but because you love someone, you want to learn. And even if you find that after learning, that is just not you can't connect, you learn to respect it. Like, you don't do things that contradict the sanctity of that belief system, whatever it might be, of the person that you love, right? So, even if you are still not convinced by their faith, you learn to respect their belief system. However, but Raquel or Rachel, she blatantly disrespected her husband, his faith, and his God by stealing her father's idol and daring to bring it along with her as they were living. Now, maybe she did it to spite her father for pitching her against her sister or for making her share Jacob with her sister. Only God knows. Or maybe she just wanted that idol and she just had to have it by hook or by crook. But what she failed to realize was that her father will pursue them for it. Of course, it was an excuse just to keep Jacob with him. That is Laban now, the father of both Rachel and Leah. So, but what she failed to realize was that her father will pursue them for it. Of course, it was an excuse just to keep Jacob with him. And he was upset that the workhorse, apparently, it, his wives wanted him for more sons. They wanted his love in a certain way, and they were extracting sons from him, kind of, while their father was extracting work and, well, profit virtue from him. What a family. Anyway, and he was upset that the workhorse had just escaped. How dare he? Well, thank God. God warned him not to harm Jacob, otherwise Jacob would have lost everything, probably his life as well. But God. Rachel also did not emphasize that she would get a curse upon her pretty head. Oh well, hindsight they say is 2020, no? How did she get a curse? Well, Jacob's corny father-in-law caught up with him, accusing him of not allowing him kiss his daughters and grandchildren before sending them on their way in celebration and fanfare. Ha! This is where I roll my eyes up thinking, can you imagine? Thinking, oh sure, of all the things you can pursue someone for, then the accusation of stealing his idol. Honestly, I think Laban was smart enough to know Jacob would not do that because it was an abomination to the God that Jacob served. Laban also probably knew it was one of his own daughters, but of course, that wasn't really the issue now, was it? Jacob felt insulted and with righteous indignation said whoever Laban's idol was found with would die. Well, if only he knew. Madame Rachel, of course, came up with a plan to keep what she had stolen. She wrapped it around in a seat, sat on it, and apologized for not getting up to properly greet her father because she was having her period. Of course, the thing wasn't found, and Jacob had a thing or two to say to his father-in-law for chasing him like a criminal after how long he had served him without Laban incurring any loss. They called a truce of some sorts and everyone went his merry way, but the damage had been done. Mrs. Rachel never made it to where they were going. Just as they were about to get there, she died after having her own second son. Tragic. Now to Judah, which is another, So we've talked about, the circumstances surrounding Judah, and probably his other siblings as well. But now to Judah. I can't really say I know why God chose Judah as the lineage of Jesus Christ, but then God had probably made his choice before Judah was born and when Judah was named. But the devil, trying to prevent the coming of Jesus, fashioned a weapon of scandalous immorality against Judah and his descendants. If you don't know what that is exactly, you have to go and read the Bible to see exactly how things, from generation to generation, what they got involved in, and so on and so forth. Knowing that God abhors sin, the enemy probably thought it would make Judah stink before God, such that God would change his mind. Well, the devil lied, as always, of course, because wonder of all wonders, God did not change his mind, and he didn't wipe out Judah for whatever abominable thing they had done. God made the rules, not the other way round. So, to the lessons, in case, we don't get it. A lot of women are like Rachel and Leah, comparing one to another, never fully being able to enjoy what they do have because they are not content. And when you are not contented, you would keep acquiring and discarding. You get what you want, but then since you have it, it no longer interests you. Then you look for something else to pursue. It's a miserable life indeed to keep pursuing any and everything that is out of your reach. So we all need to deal with the issue of contentment, right? Because this issue of contentment or lack of fulfillment is really important to look into, because that's the reason why some women would have the best man, very good looking, handsome, doesn't have skeletons in his cupboards. He loves them, like he really loves his wife and all of that. Like everything is fantastic, but they are not satisfied. And then you find them maybe getting into some addiction, right? Whether it is shopping and just shopping or getting into an affair. Same thing with men too, some men, they don't even have a reason to cheat, but they still just do. Like they can't say, this is why I did it. I guess maybe their life was too peaceful, and so they needed some drama. And instead of watching drama in movies or in serials, they decided to create one for themselves. Lord have mercy. Well, so to conclude this story time, we'll say Judah's descendants came from his union with his daughter-in-law. Lord have mercy. You have to go and read that one. Unbeknownst to him, of course. But fact is fact. He got his widowed daughter-in-law pregnant. The man had an interesting sense of justice. He could be with other women, but his widowed daughter-in-law could just wither and die. Go and read the story to find out how that happened, if you don't know what that is. For those of us who have read it, you know how that went in or down, however the one might look at it. When he found out she was the harlot he went into, well, at least he was contrite enough to see the error of his ways. Then he somehow became part of the plot that had his half-brother Joseph sold into slavery. Then one of his descendants married a harlot, commercial sex worker. Well, an ex-commercial sex worker. I think that was the greatest love stories of all times. Even if love wasn't mentioned, but you don't marry a woman who is in the sex trade, who is from a city you had to destroy, without having deep feelings for her. I love Francine Rivers' retelling of Rahab's story titled Unashamed. We need to have that in a movie, honestly. Like, yeah, and I wrote that here. It should be in the movies, I tell you. And then from her marriage, she had a son. How sweet is that? I'm not going to cry. If God gave Rahab a man who I believe loved her despite her life before they met, then God is more than able to give me and you a love connection in marriage to a beautiful spouse that would last us a lifetime. And I'm talking to you watching and listening. Like, at the end of it all, when you look at the scriptures and you see how people just get paired together, and you can see the hand of God there, you look at yourself and you be like, I mean, even if your life had gone the route that Rahab's life had gone through, God can still work a miracle in your life. You just have to keep hope alive and just keep living your life. Please God. Then after you have pleased God, please yourself. Right? Just make sure that in pleasing yourself, you don't displease God. That's just once you are sure that you are not displeasing God, and you have confirmed that what you're in your pleasing God, in your pleasing yourself, you are not displeasing God. It's a beautiful life. All right, so that concludes the story of Rahab. Well, I don't know why I said Rahab, but well, I wouldn't say I talked about Rahab like that. But if you are interested in the story of Rahab or the retelling of it, you can go and read Ransom Rivers' version. That is my favorite. I've read quite a few other stories on Rahab, but that one, the one of Ransom Rivers, is just amazing. All right. Guard your hearts with all diligence, for out of his Guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it flows the issues of life. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your might, with all your strength. And remember that loving your neighbor as yourself means that you love your neighbor only as much as you love yourself, not more than you love yourself. And that your neighbor is the person or the people that have helped you. When Jesus was asking that question, he didn't ask who was the man's neighbor. He asked who was the wounded man's neighbor. So in other words, when people have done you good, remember to also pay it forward. Remember to be grateful. Those are your neighbors. Those are the people you have to look out to or for. And make sure you remember that, in your time of need, when people you expected would have helped you, they crossed to the other side. And the person who you were told was the enemy, was the dirty person, was the one you can't and should not associate with, turns out to be the person that actually helped you. Ironic, isn't it? Well, keep God first place, and until next time, thank you for watching this far. Thank you for listening, and I hope you've learned something out of this whole story, just as I have. Again, until next time, maybe in an audio or maybe a video. It's peace.